All right, let's dive into a really fascinating story. It's one where the main characters, who are supposed to be learning about greatness, get sidetracked by a pretty childish argument about who's the best. But their leader's response? It's not just a simple correction. No, it's a complete teardown of everything we think we know about power, status, and what it really means to come out on top. Let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the private argument that kicks the whole thing off. Then we'll see how that argument leads to a radical new definition of greatness. From there, we'll explore how this new way of thinking challenges our ideas of us versus them. And that sets the stage for some really intense warnings before we finish with a final, kind of mysterious metaphor about salt and fire.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Jesus and his disciples are on the move, traveling through Galilee. He's trying to get them ready for what's coming, some of the most difficult moments of their lives. But, as it turns out, their heads are in a completely different place.
I mean, just look at the contrast on this slide. It is wild. On the left, you've got Jesus, focused on his own betrayal and death, the central event that his entire mission is built around. And on the right, his closest followers are busy arguing about their own internal rankings, trying to figure out which one of them is the most important. The disconnect here is just staggering.
So, when they finally get to a house in Capernaum, Jesus hits them with this simple, direct question. And their reaction? Well, it says everything. Complete silence. The text says they kept quiet. Why? Because they're embarrassed. They know their little squabble over status is so petty and totally misses the point. It's a very real, very human moment of ambition getting checked by a much bigger reality.
So how does Jesus respond to this? Not with anger, not by shaming them. Instead, he sits down, calls them all over, and just begins to completely dismantle their entire concept of power and greatness.
And here it is, the first huge reversal. In the world we know, greatness means climbing a ladder, right? You assert yourself, you compete, you get to the top. Jesus just flips that whole script. He says the path to real greatness isn't up, it's down. It's found in choosing to be last and taking on the role of a servant to everyone. And to make sure this really sinks in, he gives them a powerful visual. He brings a small child into the middle of the group. Now, we might see a kid and think of innocence, but you have to understand, in that ancient culture, a child was the symbol of powerlessness. They had no status, no rights, no social standing at all. They were completely dependent.
And this just nails the point. Greatness isn't about being served or getting recognized. It's about welcoming. It's about identifying with and lifting up the most vulnerable and overlooked people in society. He's saying, when you embrace the powerless, you're actually embracing me. And when you do that, you're embracing the very one who sent me. So you'd think after that lesson on humility, they'd get it. But no, they immediately find a new way to create a hierarchy. They shift from an internal power struggle to an external one. They start drawing lines to figure out who's in and who's out.
You can almost hear the pride in John's voice, can't you? He was not one of us. They saw someone doing something good, something powerful, but because he wasn't part of their exclusive little group, their first instinct was to shut him down. This is classic tribalism, that us versus them thinking that fuels so much conflict.
Jesus' response is so quick and decisive. He doesn't just correct them, he completely blows the walls off their exclusive club. His logic is simple. If someone is doing good in my name, they're an ally, not an enemy. This radically expands the definition of who belongs, pushing back hard against that human instinct to create insiders and outsiders.
Okay, so we've redefined greatness and inclusion. Now the teaching takes a really dramatic turn. Jesus issues one of the most severe warnings in his entire ministry, and it's all about the massive responsibility we have for how we influence other people.
First, let's get this term straight. Causing to stumble. This isn't just about offending someone or having a little disagreement. This is about being an obstacle that causes another person, especially someone who is new or vulnerable in their faith, to fall into sin or give up on their faith entirely. It's serious stuff.
And to show just how serious it is, Jesus uses this absolutely terrifying image. A millstone was a huge, heavy stone wheel used to grind grain, weighing hundreds of pounds. The punishment he's describing is a horrific death. The message is crystal clear. In his kingdom, causing someone's spiritual ruin is one of the worst offenses imaginable.
Then he turns that same intensity inward, on ourselves, with this shocking, over-the-top language. Now, of course, he's not literally telling people to self-mutilate. He's using extreme metaphors to make a point you'll never forget.
You have to be absolutely ruthless in getting rid of anything in your own life, a habit, a desire, whatever, that could cause you or someone else to fall. No sacrifice is too great. And that brings us to how he wraps all this up, with a couple of cryptic but really powerful metaphors. He shifts from those dramatic warnings to a final instruction on our inner character and how we get along with each other.
Now, this is a strange phrase, and people have debated it for centuries, but it brings two really powerful ideas together. Fire purifies, salt preserves. So the idea seems to be that everyone is going to go through some kind of testing, a refining process that burns away all the junk and preserves what's true and good.
Then he really focuses on the salt. Salt was incredibly valuable back then. It preserved food, it added flavor, it was essential for life. He says his followers are supposed to be like that salt, a preserving, positive influence on the world. But then he asks this really piercing question. What good is salt if it's not salty anymore? What good is a believer who's lost that distinct, positive character?
And right here, the entire lesson comes full circle. Remember how this whole thing kicked off, with the disciples arguing about who was the greatest? Well, Jesus' final command is the perfect antidote. Have salt among yourselves. Cultivate that inner character of goodness and value, and be at peace with each other. He makes it totally clear that real greatness isn't found in competition, but in a community that's living in harmony.
So that leaves us with one final thing to think about. In a world that is still so obsessed with status, a world that is constantly building walls between us and them, and where our influence can so easily trip people up, what does it actually look like to live out this upside-down vision of greatness? What does it really mean for us to be salty today?